Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I'm here with my Axial SCX24 C10. I've done some more modifications to it, including adding some brass hexes as well as new wheels and tires to give it a little bit more edge over the competition for crawling. The next big thing that I have here today is a rear diff cover made of brass from Hot Racing. There's a lot of companies that make them, but I went with the Hot Racing one. And I'm going to show you how to install it. There weren't really that many comprehensive install videos, so I'm hoping that part of my journey forward with this RC car will be some more how-to videos. So I'm going to get started on that and let you know what you need to complete it, give you an idea of how long it takes, but this should be a pretty straightforward and simple installation. So enjoy, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them below in the comments. And before we get into the video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, just because that helps kind of boost things into the algorithm. All right, let's get started. Okay, first things first, what you're going to need in order to complete this is an Allen key. I have this set of hex wrenches here. The 050 is the size that I use, 0.050. It fits perfectly, and it's a little bit stronger than the stock one, which has a tendency to strip hardware. The other thing that you're going to need for this is some gear grease. This is from Reef's RC, and you really only need a little bit of it, but it's good to have some in there. I'm going to use a toothpick to apply that, and of course you obviously need the rear diff cover and the truck itself. So first things first, you're going to need to remove these 6 bolts on the back of the rear differential cover, and I'm going to leave the body on for this. There could be just a little bit of rub, but first thing first is just to remove these bolts. And again, this Allen key is just a little bit better than the stock ones, and I'm going to speed this footage up because we don't need to sit through me struggling to do this. All right, and 6. So once you remove those 6 bolts, and notice I've laid them out the same way that they came out of the differential because the top 2 bolts are actually just a little bit longer. This is what the inside of the differential is going to look like. You've got your gear here, and this is where we're going to add the grease, but we'll get to that in just a second. First, let's talk about what this looks like from the factory. So you've got your bearing up here, and this is actually going to have to get popped out and reused on the brass differential. And notice there was a little bit of grease in my stock differential housing here, and my cousins actually didn't have that much grease on it, which is why I picked up a little bit of extra grease just to add, but there is some in there, and we will still add some since the new differential cover, of course, does not have any grease in it. So let's get this open. The nice thing about the Hot Racing one is it comes with new hardware, and again, if you're still using the stock tools, there's sometimes a bit of a tendency for the stock hex wrench to actually strip the stock hardware. There's the new diff cover, new hardware versus the old one. It's a little more substantial. Pros and cons to each of these, of course. The pros to the brass is that it adds weight down low. This is 9 grams, and it will help lower the center of gravity. It also looks pretty cool in my opinion. The downside, of course, is that brass gets a little more hung up than the stock plastic one. Plus, since it sticks out just a bit longer, it will actually make it even more prone to getting hung up on some sharp obstacles like rocks. Overall, I still think that it's totally worth it, and it should be a very, very simple install for you, especially if you're new to the RC scene. This is a great spot to get started. So first things first, we need to get this bearing out of the differential case, because we're going to reuse that. Easiest way to do it is to just use the same Allen key that you were using, or something else that you can kind of push in there and pop it out. There's a bit of resistance on this one. I didn't expect it. There we go. The last couple that I've dealt with actually popped out a lot easier than that one. This one was a little more difficult, but here it is, and this is going to go right in the same section on the new diff cover. There might be just a tad bit of resistance, but it should pop right into place after that. And this is what it's going to look like before you put it back on the truck. It is necessary that you do that. Now, the next thing we're going to do here is just put a little bit of grease right here in the teeth of this gear. And again, there was some in their stock, and I see just a little bit, but that'll help to grease up the differential themselves and the bearings that are in there. There's 3 bearings total, 1 on each axle, plus the one that sits at the top of the diff cover. So best thing to do here, you just need a little bit. A little goes a long way. You don't want to flood the entire thing with grease that will actually end up hurting you in the long run. So I've got my grease here. As you can see, totally brand new, starting from scratch with the grease too. Peel this off. And this grease, according to their website, is good for various applications. They actually recommend it for servos. It's good for plastic gears, metal gears, etc. A lot of people use marine grease on these. I don't think that the type of grease matters as much as using just a little bit of grease to make sure everything is moving as it should. So you're going to apply that to the teeth of the gear. And again, you don't want to fill the diff with grease. You just want to get some on the teeth of the gear. Then I'm going to place that on the side. And you can cheat and turn the truck on if you want in order to get the wheels to spin, or I like to just grab the drive shaft and give that a little twist. And that will help to spin the gears and get that grease. See how it distributes itself? And if you need just to add just a tad bit more, see on the back side of the gear, there's not quite as much grease. You can just spin the drive shaft until that comes back around. Maybe just add a little bit more, but you really don't need a lot. A little goes a long way with these small trucks. But I am just gonna add a little bit more, just a little bit. There it is on my toothpick. That's just gonna go right there in the gear. See, just a little bit. All right, now that that's all set, next thing is putting the diff cover back on. Very simple and straightforward because it fits perfectly. Pops right into place. And this will give you an idea of what your truck is actually going to look like by the time it's done. So now that that's back into place, the bearings lined up as it should be, we got to screw it down. I'm going to actually reuse the stock hardware because it didn't strip for me. And I think that the black is a little bit cleaner of a look than the silver, but it is nice to have that backup just in case. And it doesn't matter what you choose to use. If you want to use your stock hardware, that's fine. If you want to use the hot racing hardware, that's fine too. Remember, top bolts are the two long ones, and the other four are kind of interchangeable, but I had them laid out the same way they came out of the housing. And the other thing that I want to mention here is you don't want to tighten this down too much. If you tighten it too much, there's just going to be a little bit too much resistance binding, and that, of course, is never a good recipe in order to keep your truck running well. That's how you burn out motors and things like that. The holes on the brass diff cover are not threaded, unlike the holes on the plastic diff cover, which is why these just slid in versus you have to unscrew them all the way on the stock one. All right, I'm going to get to screwing these back up, and then we'll check back in right as I tighten up the last one, and you can get a look at what it looks like finished. Okay, so this is what it looks like installed, and again, you want this to be snug, not tight. Another good way to test it is, again, just to grab the drive shaft and spin it a little bit. Make sure everything is moving as it should. Otherwise, you'll be talking about burned out motors, just like a lot of people online are. And again, this has some other minor upgrades to it, but this is how my C10 sits right now. And I'll be sure to do some more videos like this if this is something that interests people. Thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for my wrap up and when I announce that we are starting to move forward in some plans with making a course. Thanks everybody, I hope you enjoyed. So this is as my C10 sits now, and of course it's got the nice fancy brass diff cover on the back of it right now, as well as some other minor upgrades. I've enjoyed really toying around with this truck, no pun intended. Did a front bumper delete for a better approach angle, as well as a couple of other supporting mods. So as we get into the springtime here, and especially the summer, I think we're gonna start working on our course, and I'm hoping that that's something that's gonna be completed this fall. We'll have some video updates along the way, plus of course, some driving, and I'm hoping that this fall we can start to do something like a more regular series where maybe every Friday I upload a video of us actually driving the course. And if that's something you'd like, make sure you subscribe. And again, if you could just like this video, maybe leave a comment, that really helps a ton. Thanks everybody, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, just leave a comment below.